Hey everybody, welcome again to Day After Tuesday. You might notice that it's a little bit different. We're using slides this time. I want to try something a little different because there's a good amount of information here. This might be a little bit more engaging when it comes to learning some things. When I say things, I mean actions, things you can do. As a reminder, what is Day After Tuesday? Day After Tuesday is a segment and content for what you can do for the 2024 elections throughout the year, because we don't want to wake up on that Wednesday after November 5th, 2024, election day. There are many elections throughout the year, but that one big election day, the day after, we don't want to wake up like we did in 2016. And of course, in 2020, it was not the Wednesday after that Tuesday, it was the Saturday actually that we learned who was going to become president. Then some shaky things happened on January 6th that, well, we won't go there, but suffice it to say that the feeling and the sentiment of waking up not regretting, not doing more, not doing things sooner. If you say, "Oh, but I voted, what else could I have done?" This content is for you. And so I want to remind you that it's action driven. What kind of information am I giving you? Actionable recommendations, not a summary of political news and political headlines. If you think back to the political headlines that you've been reading, you know that they're not very healthy for you to be staring at the New York Times headlines and reading into every bit of news about Trump, let's say. Uh, for example, Trump owes New York a bajillion dollars now. Does that matter? Not really. Not to you, not to the things you need to do in order to help fight for democracy for the 2024 elections. Now, actually, I will tell you that Trump money thing matters a little bit in some ways, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on when we get to the segment on money and how it helps to win elections. But my point is, you shouldn't focus on these political headlines because that will give you a sense of just forever scrolling doom. And really, we have to fight doom with the opposite of doom. And the opposite of doom is not hope, it's planning. So here is the plan for today's segment. I'm going to teach you a little bit more about what wins elections, and it's the three M's: messaging, mobilizing, money. There's one other thing. There's another M, it's miscellaneous things you can't control. But, you don't want to focus on those things because it's not productive to do that. And I'll define messaging, mobilizing, and money. Miscellaneous would be things like acts of God or maybe an FBI director's report about some emails and laptops, hypothetically speaking. Anyway, so let's go into messaging. What is messaging? How does it help you help win elections? Well, let's go through two R's. Resonance. It's content, by the way, that has these two R's. Resonance, which is about the right content, saying the right thing. What resonates with people? Which brings me to reach. It's about reaching the right people, let's say suburban moms. Right place, as in the content has to be placed somewhere where someone can digest or consume that content. So is it digital? Is it social media? Is it billboards? Is it ads? And then right time. A lot of times, the right time is some fresh, new information, but right time might also be continuous. So not just striking while the iron is hot, which is very important, but a continuous drumbeat to make sure you remind people of that content or that message. And we'll talk a little bit more about some examples here. But next, I want to go into mobilizing, and there are two G's here. Get the volunteers. That's recruiting volunteers. And this is very important in terms of getting people who are like-minded, as in they want to do something, they want to be active, and they want to participate. They might not know how to do it, Maybe they've done it before, actually. So there are different ways to recruit volunteers. There's recruiting new volunteers, but there's also reactivating old volunteers. But either way, getting them and getting them early, very key, because you need people and manpower or people power in order to get things done. So the sooner you recruit volunteers, the more exponential your efforts are. That's what mobilizing is. Well, that's the first G. Second, get out the vote. And so it's if the first one is getting volunteers to do things, volunteers get people to do things too, and that includes getting out the vote, getting people to go out to vote. But this also includes some early things that includes identifying voters as well as persuading voters, getting them to register to vote, etc. And it goes all the way till, it starts from the primaries, registering to vote for the primaries, because it's shown that people who register to vote, they're more likely to vote continuously. So getting them to register early, for example, is one tactic. And then there's early voting. So not just get out the vote on that one day, but no, getting out the vote early on so that you can lock in those votes. You're getting more confidence that you can win an election. Things happen, such as snowstorms. We had one in New York that may have slowed down and prevented some people from voting. So you want to get out the vote and get it out early and register people, et cetera, et cetera. That's mobilizing. Money. All right, there are two A's here. Ads. You know what ads are. You see them all the time. They cost money. They cost money whether you are a candidate or a campaign that's buying ads on behalf of your own campaign, or it costs more, but it costs some money if you're buying it as a PAC or a super PAC. You're not supposed to buy on behalf of a candidate. You're not coordinating, but there are super PACs and PACs that support candidates. They buy ads about those candidates or against the other candidate. The other A is activities. People really call it operations, like the campaign operations itself, like the field organization, a lot of different just offices and things like that. The technology, the accounting, all that stuff is activities. The people power, like I said, that costs money as well. So it takes money to run a campaign through to the election. All right, those are the three M's I wanted to inform you about conceptually. What are your actions that you can take for those three M's? I have two examples here, but it doesn't have to look like this. There are many different types, depending on how much or how little time you have, or how much or how little money you have, and where you want to put your focus. I want to give you some recommendations. All right, let's start with some money actions. I told you last time to sign up for the Swing Left newsletters and to check out this Swing Left fund. I said it was called the Blueprint Fund. They're changing the name of that right now, actually. They call it the Swing Left Impact Fund. It's a basket of the most impactful elections in groups to put your money in. They'll apportion your money based on what is most impactful. You can adjust it if you want. You can change your preferences, etc. But you can contribute once, the impact fund, or you can contribute continuously and have it be a regular, continuous, like monthly donation, however you want to choose it. But that's Swing Left and their fund that they have. Or you can pick and choose. Instead of having them pick for you, you can pick specific states, specific races, or organizations that are a little bit orthogonal or tangential, but they get some specific impact areas or causes. So some specific states and races, I break them down into presidential states that are battleground, competitive. Think about the ones that were competitive in 2020. It's Arizona, Georgia, and this is in sort of ascending order of, or rather, it's in like the most important to focus on, or maybe the most competitive in the beginning, and then ends with maybe some other ones that you maybe, not as competitive, but maybe you feel a close affinity to them. For example, Nevada, I have that at the end after Pennsylvania because I feel like it's, well, I think we've won it by a bigger margin than all the other states that I have here, but it is a battleground state. But it's Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and maybe Nevada. All right. What about defend the state? Senate, sorry, not state. There are different states that are up for grabs, and we have to defend the slim majority that we have in the Senate. So these states are Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Montana, which is Jon Tester, Ohio, Sherrod Brown, And maybe Texas, Colin Allred, who is going up against Ted Cruz. Normally, Texas very red, but it's a kind of a gamble slash it would be nice to win that one because Ted Cruz is a little more vulnerable now after his Cancun cruise situation with the Texas energy crisis, snowstorm crisis. Either way, he's not as popular as he used to be. By the way, the order of this in terms of putting your money into these specific states, the top one, battleground presidential states, that is, call it very important. Maybe it's a headliner, but do know that your money can go farther in more lower scale kind of races because some of these states or some of these, let's say you donate to the Biden campaign. Well, you could think about that as they have a lot of money already, but you can donate to different organizations in those states. So anyway, continuing to uh, a different category here is regain the House. So we've got the presidency, we've got the Senate. I think that the House may be more easily winnable here, but it's worth putting some money and effort into these races as well. There are a lot to choose. And by the way, when I say regain the House, there's a slim GOP majority. And because of that slim GOP majority, we can't get things done like a border security bill, the one that the GOP negotiated and the one that they shot down. So to regain the House, there are some competitive races. There are a lot to choose throughout the country, but I would go by competitiveness of the race itself, and there's a list of them, as well as the impact, basically, to help us win back the majority in the House. I would go for some California and New York ones. We just won a special election to replace George Santos, and I helped out with that via canvassing and phone banking. Local races. Okay. There's a state governor. I call that local, but it's statewide and local level, not federal. So there's the governor who makes a lot of decisions and also appoints court judges sometimes. There's the state legislature, which makes laws for that state, laws including laws that govern that state in terms of, let's say, policy, jobs, even women's health care, pro-choice, those kinds of laws. They get done at a state level with state legislatures. And then finally, state courts. Some state courts are sometimes the judges are elected, but again, they can be appointed by the governor. There are lots to choose here. I would still go by the competitiveness of the race as well as the impact. I would go especially for the legislatures, the state legislatures, the Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona. There are others, but those three are good ones. And New Hampshire and North Carolina governors as well. Those are pretty important. Those are kind of swing-y states or purple-ish, and they have pretty big impacts on those states, especially for North Carolina with the two it's basically a Republican state legislature now, and we need the North Carolina governor to stay Democratic. Finally, not having anything to do with specific races and campaigns and political candidates, there are organizations that are related to different causes like climate change causes, like the Sunrise Movement, underserved voters in different communities of color, and then finally, rural voters. And there are plenty of other types of causes and organizations, but these are just a few examples. One note here when it comes to picking and choosing, you notice there's some overlap in states. I would try to gain efficiencies of your money and your efforts with overlapping states. All right, let's go with messaging actions, the second M. There's the content, right? The right content that resonates. Just a few talking points if you want to choose some. There's women's health, for example, the Alabama Supreme Court decision that embryos are babies, frozen embryos, who now you got to treat them like life. So kind of complications we have there. It has a huge chilling effect on just medicine, family planning, medical care. Anyway, there's also encroaching abortion bans. They say it's going to be, oh, it's a nice compromise. It's 15-week, et cetera, et cetera. And then you see Florida, much shorter than 15-week abortion ban. And what about the national abortion ban? They've been talking about trying to wave a magic wand and look over here, look over here. No, the messaging here is that This has been the plan the whole time. The restriction of abortion rights has been the plan, and they're encroaching with different bans, and you just keep going and going and going. So there is no compromise here. And we see that they don't argue in good faith when it comes to these kinds of bills or the messaging around these kind of bills that restrict abortion rights, which brings me to another thing: chaos versus normalcy and governments acting in good faith. So we want a working government that's including, one that promotes democracy and one that, if Trump comes back and becomes a quote unquote dictator for a day, forget what he said in terms of words, but think about just what he plans on doing, installing a bunch of, well, trying to pardon himself. That would upend the legal system. There's a lot to that. But all in all, for him to do what he wants to do, it upends a lot of democratic institutions and processes, and that's no good. It's not good. Those things that happen won't be good for government, won't be good for the economy, just a lot of things. So, and then there's the norm, those are the day-to-day chaos that you got to live with if we have a GOP president slash Trump. Then there's the government working at all for us, the people. So I guess that GOP border bill that they were negotiating, and then they killed themselves because it would not serve them if they helped pass a bill for Biden. So they'll keep the problem and campaign on it until Trump becomes president. That's not a government that works for us. Again, this kind of content, you got to drill it into people. Climate change, the environment. We see the impacts of climate change on farmers, agriculture. Um, we see it in terms of our environment. Florida certainly sees it. We've got a lot of, weather anomalies. And speaking of the environment, there's also the air we breathe, the EPA enforcing, holding companies accountable to keeping us healthy. And then finally, another one that's strong: wealth inequality and taxes, tax inequality. There's a lot to capital gains tax and maybe real estate loopholes, whatever you want to talk about. There's obviously a wealth inequality here. There's the working class, there's labor unions, the stuff that the UAW is doing with Shawn Fain. Great hero story, great champion of the working class. There's a lot there. I mean, Biden supports that kind of work. So do Democrats. All right, different formats where you can use this kind of content and messaging. One to many. Do social sharing if you're comfortable using whatever you're using: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, etc. Then there's one to few. This is talking about the reach part where, yeah, top down, maybe, Biden can buy some ads. That's one to many, but Biden can't reach people that you can reach in your network, your friend groups. Maybe they live in battleground states, or maybe they have strong feelings, but they don't know how to be active, or maybe they're persuadable. This is the power of you and your relational organizing or relational messaging. And then finally, not you as one to many, but you working with an organization to promote messaging to many. You can use your skills for an organization called Tech for Campaigns. This is one example of an organization where they help different candidates who need help with building websites or their email programs and their ad programs. And these projects have a specific period of time where you'd be helping out and building or continuing with their website or email or ads. You can be a project manager, you can be the website person, you can be the email writer, etc. So there are different roles for these projects. These are some of the types of ways that messaging uh, can reach the right people. All right, lastly, the third M, mobilizing. By the way, everything here also applies to the money actions, maybe more so when it comes to spending your time rather than just the money in different areas. First, sign up for a mobilize.us opportunity. Different events or different volunteering events or just different newsletters and things. Just be in the know. Swing Left, their newsletter, just sign up for something. There are different formats for the volunteering and the mobilizing. Remember, I said recruiting volunteers and getting out the vote. Well, You can phone bank, calling people, calling voters, etc., calling volunteers too. But sometimes they're past Democratic volunteers. They're happy to get your call because they're supportive of the cause, but maybe they haven't been reactivated and they could use a phone call. So there's phone banking to do all kinds of things, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the types of campaigns, but phone. Now there's text. You don't like talking on the phone? By the way, there are smart dialers and auto dialing technology. You don't have to just press all these numbers. There's a lot of technology out there that these campaigns use. Text banking, you're not just texting with your phone, there are texting programs. But if you don't prefer, you don't like talking on the phone, then you use text. Another, this is pretty cool, postcards/letters. These work pretty well too. There are stats on how much they drive engagement because it's a thing that arrives and it has all the words on there. Nobody's going to hang up on you. It's a piece of paper, maybe a nice piece of paper. Postcards with messaging that the campaign will tell you what to write, etc. There's an organization called Vote Forward that you can sign up for. You can write a bunch of postcards. You just sign your name, etc., and then you send them out. Then the last one, canvassing, in person, door knocking. That's what I did in Virginia. That's what I did in New York, Pennsylvania, a bunch of places. So, there's nothing that beats this in terms of effectiveness and sort of a person really engaging you as a voter. But it's not for everybody. It can be pretty fun though. Those are the formats. Here are different campaign types that can vary and can match up to different formats. There's volunteer recruitment, like I said, in various formats. There's registering to vote, registering for the primary, or registering for the general election later this year. Registering to vote, especially early, makes it more likely that the person will vote. Persuasion, persuading people to vote for a certain candidate, persuading them about different issues, identifying their issues first, and then persuading them. There's a script to it, etc. Get out the vote. Again, get out the vote for early voting allows you to bank a certain amount of votes. It's also good for the voter being called all the time. If they voted already, there's actually a registry that says that person has voted, won't call them again. All these efforts, by the way, even if you don't really fully get what you want in terms of the conversion of a person, it takes 6 touches or something like that on average to really convert and be fully engaging and convince. Secondly, you also help with cleaning up the data that they have. You tried once, okay, somebody else would try again, or you might hit somebody who's a wrong number. That helps clean up the data for the campaign. All right, I want to end with some hope. So like I said, we don't want to doom. We don't want to read these dooming headlines and keep scrolling and just have us be toxifying ourselves. We want to detox, okay? And the opposite of doom is not hope. It's planning. But I do want to end with a bit of hope. I talked about money and Trump and headlines and things like that. Well, I will say that him owing, what is it, hundreds of millions of dollars plus interest, the more he doesn't pay it, that eats up his money. And the news of Laura Trump, who he's pushing to become the head of the the National Republican, you know what I'm talking about, the NRC. Anyway, National Republican Committee, I think it's called. Anyway, the National Republican organization that basically raises money and doles out money to different Republican candidates. Laura Trump said she's going to commit, was it every dollar or every penny to getting Donald Trump reelected. And what that really means, it includes his legal fees and all the trouble that he's having right now. That means less money for other Republican candidates and his own election campaign too, Trump's. So the hope here is that there is a money advantage. There's also advantages in those other two ends because of the distraction that's happening from the trials, etc. So frankly, we can strike while the iron is hot. If the money that they're using is being siphoned into these distractions, as well as the other things they need to do being siphoned into these distractions, then we on the Democratic side can strike while the iron is hot when it comes to putting money into work, volunteering, and messaging. We can be proactive. We can get ahead of it So please do those things that I said, maybe just even one of them. The earlier, the better, and get into the swing of things. Anyway, that's your hope, and that is your second segment of Day After Tuesday. Thank you.